In 2006, Amazon was a $10 billion online retailer that sold books, CDs, and patio furniture. That same year, it quietly launched a side project, web services that let developers rent computing power by the hour. Wall Street barely noticed. 19 years later, that side project generates $142 billion in annual revenue, holds 30% of the global cloud market, and produces 57% of Amazon's total operating profit. It's called Amazon Web Services. The story of how a bookstore built the invisible backbone of the internet is the most consequential business pivot of the 21st century. The year is 1994. Jeff Bezos, 30, is a senior vice president at D.E. Shaw, a Manhattan hedge fund. He discovers web usage is growing 2,300% per year. Bezos lists 20 product categories viable online. Books top it, 3 million titles in print, no physical store could hold them all. He drives to Seattle, writes the business plan on the passenger seat, incorporates Amazon on July 5, 1994. The company goes public in 1997 at $18 a share, raising $54 million. It burns cash for years. Bezos doesn't care. He's building infrastructure, warehouses, fulfillment algorithms, data centers. Hundreds of millions flow into server farms just to survive holiday traffic spikes. Then, around 2002, Bezos issues what insiders now call the API mandate, a company-wide edict to every engineering team. All internal infrastructure must be accessible through standardized service interfaces. Teams communicate only through published APIs. Violators face termination. The mandate forces Amazon to rebuild its entire technology stack as modular components, storage, computing, messaging, databases, all accessed through clean interfaces. Amazon doesn't know it yet, but it's building a cloud platform inside its own walls. In 2003, engineers Chris Pinkham and Benjamin Black fly to Cape Town, South Africa, tasked with untangling Amazon's sprawling internal infrastructure. They write a paper proposing something radical. Instead of just fixing the mess, Amazon should productize its infrastructure and sell it, raw computing utility, billed by the hour. Bezos greenlights the project. He orders Pinkham to build the team in Cape Town, as far from Seattle as possible, to keep corporate antibodies from killing the experiment. Andy Jassy, a 35-year-old who spent the previous 18 months shadowing Bezos as his technical assistant, is tapped to run it from Seattle. The Cape Town team builds EC2, the Elastic Compute Cloud, in secrecy. Seattle builds S3, Simple Storage Service. On March 14, 2006, AWS launches S3 with a blog post. EC2 follows that August. The product is crude, one instance type, no persistent storage. 10 cents per hour. Traditional IT vendors dismiss it. Larry Ellison calls cloud computing gibberish. Steve Ballmer says Microsoft is betting on the enterprise, and the cloud doesn't solve enterprise problems. They sell million-dollar server contracts and decade-long licensing deals. The idea of trusting critical infrastructure to a bookstore is absurd. They're all wrong. Startups flood in. Instead of raising $5 million for servers before writing code, a founder swipes a credit card and launches for $50. Pinterest builds on AWS. Slack, Airbnb, Dropbox, an entire generation of billion-dollar companies is incubated on Amazon's cloud. By 2010, AWS hits $500 million in revenue. Microsoft and Google wake up. Azure launches in February 2010, Google Cloud in 2011. 4 years behind. In 2011 alone, AWS ships 82 major feature releases, a new service every 2 weeks. Turning point. The moment AWS transforms from startup tool to global power infrastructure arrives in 2013. The CIA awards a $600 million cloud computing contract. Every major defense contractor bids. IBM, married to the intelligence community for decades, assumes it will win. AWS takes it. IBM protests. The Government Accountability Office investigates. AWS keeps the contract. The CIA deal sends a shockwave through boardrooms. If the intelligence community trusts a bookstore with classified workloads, what excuse remains for not moving payroll to the cloud? Within 18 months, AWS signs GE, Capital One, Johnson & Johnson, and BMW. The enterprise dam breaks. Then in 2015, Amazon breaks out AWS as a separate reporting segment. The numbers stun everyone: $1.57 billion quarterly revenue, $265 million operating income, while Amazon's entire North American retail operation posts just $527 million in profit on $13.4 billion in revenue. The market grasps the truth instantly: Amazon isn't a retailer with a cloud hobby. Amazon is a cloud company masquerading as a retailer. AWS becomes the profit engine that funds everything: free Prime shipping, billion-dollar content deals, Whole Foods for $13.7 billion. All underwritten by margins from renting virtual servers. As of Q1 2026, AWS generates $37.59 billion in quarterly revenue, a $150 billion annualized run rate. Operating income tops $14 billion per quarter with margins near 35%. AWS alone, as a standalone company, would be worth over $1 trillion. It's less than 20% of Amazon's revenue. It generates well over half the profit. AWS holds 30% global cloud market share. Microsoft Azure, 20%. Google Cloud, 13%. Everyone else splits the remainder. AWS operates 36 geographic regions with 114 availability zones, adding a gigawatt of data center power per quarter. It employs more PhD economists than the Federal Reserve to optimize its pricing. The Internet runs on AWS. Netflix, 15% of global Internet bandwidth, runs entirely on it. The Department of Defense runs classified workloads on it. Zoom scaled from 10 million to 300 million daily users during the pandemic on it. When AWS has an outage, maps stop loading, door locks stop unlocking, trading floors pause. The modern economy briefly stops breathing. Here's the detail few appreciate: Amazon didn't win the cloud war by being better. It won by being first. Between 2006 and 2011, AWS had zero direct competition, for years running unopposed in a market that would eventually reshape computing. Microsoft entered with enterprise relationships and Office bundling, couldn't close the gap. Google entered with superior AI talent, couldn't close the gap. The first-mover advantage in cloud was insurmountable. Lesson: the AWS story contradicts every business school principle. MBA curricula preach focus, core competency, staying in your lane. Amazon built the most valuable technology franchise of the modern era by doing the opposite, taking internal infrastructure, a cost center every company minimizes, and turning it into the product. Bezos called it the primitives philosophy. Build the smallest unit of value: raw compute, raw storage, raw networking. Make it self-service. Price it near zero. Let customers assemble their own solutions. Don't solve the customer's problem. Give them primitives and get out of the way. Timing matters equally. AWS launched in 2006, 2 years before the iPhone, 3 years before the app economy, right as broadband crossed critical mass. The project didn't respond to a market. It created one. When Pinkham and Black wrote their paper in 2003, the phrase, cloud computing, didn't exist. Amazon built the runway before the airplane, and owned the sole landing strip when aviation began. Closing: in spring 2006, a program manager posted on Amazon's internal wiki, "What are we doing running compute and storage services? We're a retailer." Skeptical comments followed. The thread went dormant. That skeptic is now almost certainly a multimillionaire. Anyone holding Amazon stock since 2006 saw roughly a 12,000% return. Amazon's market cap, $15 billion at AWS launch, now exceeds $2.3 trillion. The bookstore in the garage became a cloud monopoly wrapped in a retail company. The most extraordinary truth, AWS was never supposed to exist. It was an accident, born from a paper by two engineers trying to fix internal infrastructure. Bezos saw the possibility. Jassy executed it. 20 years of relentless iteration did the rest. The internet runs on Amazon's cloud. Tonight, the next great startup is being built on it, someone with a credit card and an idea, in a dorm room, in Lagos, in Sao Paulo, paying pocket change to launch. That was the promise in 2006. It's the reality in 2026. And it all started with a bookseller who couldn't keep his servers from crashing during Christmas.